We are just a little over 24 hours away from the dawn of a brand new NFL season. We've got a ton to talk about on tonight's episode of Carving It Up, with some college football business to get to first. Why the embarrassing 48-14 loss by North Carolina to TCU is yet the latest indictment in the remarkably overrated career of Bill Belichick. Talk about that to start the show. I'm coming out fiery, baby. Also want to get into Nick Sirianni, a coach I've been critical of. I gotta say, kind of like his strategy, an Eagles strategy going into a season where they're trying to repeat as Super Bowl champions. Talk about that. Carving Up the Context is back with Charles Barkley, and we all love Chuck. Sir Charles, he's the man, but the most hypocritical thing he's ever said in his life regarding LeBron James, Kevin Durant. Talk about that. Bryson's best 10, my first top 10 rankings of NFL teams of this NFL season. Get to that. And at the end of the show, Cowboys, Eagles. We've got an NFL game, an actual game to predict. That's all coming up. Drop the beat, baby. Here we go. We are rolling. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Hopefully, we'll get on X at some point. We're dealing with some issues regarding I don't know if it's the stream or the connection. Trying to get that back on tap. If it doesn't work, it is what it is. Sometimes, technical difficulties come about, but we've got tons to talk about. It's just now 6 o'clock Eastern. We are 26 hours away, folks. Just a little over 26 hours away from a brand new NFL season. I cannot wait. We got Cowboys, Eagles. Predict that at the end of the show. Obviously, you heard the stuff we'll talk about. Bryson's best 10. I got to say, this is the first show that I've done where it's like, oh, football's back. Like, even my previous show, it's like, it's predictions, it's prognostications. It's like, no, there's an actual game to predict. It's Carving Up the Context. Bryson's best 10. Look, we're back in the NFL rhythm here on Carving Up Live, and I could not be more excited and more happy to be here to be able to give that to you guys. So, tons to talk about. I got to say, as fired up as I've been going into a show in some time, so let's get right to it. But first, if there's one thing that we know about, and I want to be very delicate when I say this, because this is going to be a fiery show, so I might as well ease into things. If there's one thing that we know about folks who have the privilege, as we all hope to have at some point in our lives, to get up there in age, it's that as you get older, you really don't change much. Most of the evolution, so to speak, of a human being, emotionally, physically, spiritually, in some cases, like that happens kind of between, I'd say, the ages of like 13 to 50. I'm no psychologist, but it feels like that's around that kind of period. Once you get to your mid 70s, kind of where you are. Bill Belichick has defied all logic. He has defied all reason as it pertains to that idea. So, first of all, Bill Belichick's UNC Tar Heels lost 48-14 to the TCU Horned Frogs, a team that was objectively better than North Carolina coming in. Like, I picked TCU. They were favored as a road team coming into Chapel Hill. We knew all of those things. Hoover's a really nice quarterback who could potentially have an NFL future if he continues to develop. So I like what he brings to the table. But we didn't necessarily expect a situation where the quarterback for UNC, this kid by the name of, and I hate to pick on him, but Gio Lopez, goes basically 2 hours without completing a pass. UNC has a great opening drive, and then they fall apart from there. Max Johnson ends up coming in. He's the son of Brad Johnson, the Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Bucs back in the day. Cool story. He'll probably end up being the starter for it's all said and done. But the story to me for Bill Belichick and the UNC Tar Heels is pretty simple. Is the fact that this is, or at least appears to be, the latest addition to a chapter, to a part of Bill Belichick's career at least, where it's, okay, yeah, he's really, really ordinary without Tom Brady. Like, really ordinary. Even among all-time great coaches. Like, we can show the numbers, what Bill Belichick did with Tom Brady, and the success is pretty much unparalleled in the history of the NFL. Man won 76% of his games. This is between 2001 and 2019, obviously. 17 division titles, which is insane. 13 conference title games, 9 Super Bowl appearances, and they, of course, won 6 of those games. Could have won all 9, could have lost all 9. They were pretty much all close. So incredible success with the GOAT himself, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. Without Tom, not great. We're not even going to include the North Carolina aspect of this yet until probably the season is over. But the 91-95 when he coached the Cleveland Browns, the first year in 2000 when Brady did not start, and then between 2020 and 2023, which was his final 4 years in New England where there was no Tom Brady, he won 42% of his games. No division titles. went to 0 conference championship games, didn't win any playoff games for that matter. Obviously 0 Super Bowl appearances and no Super Bowl championships. Even by the standards of some all-time great coaches, that's atrocious. Like if you look at the likes of a Tom Landry after Roger Staubach, who's probably the greatest Cowboy quarterback ever, Captain America, the whole bit, after Roger Staubach retired, he still went to multiple conference championship games after that. You look at the likes of, somebody like Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs, who's the most underrated coach in the history of the NFL. I don't care what anybody says. Man won 3 Super Bowls in a decade span, basically, with 3 different quarterbacks. Like his system was so strong, and it was a different time in the NFL, obviously, where the quarterback position wasn't as important as it is now. But he won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. Pretty incredible stuff on the part of the great Joe Gibbs. Andy Reid, we can show you the numbers. This is why I have, since the show began in 2019, which for the record was before this man ever even won his first Super Bowl, I've always said, from a coaching perspective, in terms of getting the most out of the talent, by the way, in terms of evaluating talent, Andy Reid is absolutely above Bill Belichick. We can show you. With Mahomes, Andy Reid's obviously had incredible success. 77% of his games that he has won, 7 division titles, 7 conference title games. He has won or gone to 5 Super Bowls, won 3 of them. Like the success is off the charts, obviously. But without Mahomes, Andy Reid was still really good. He won 60% of his games, 8 division titles, went to 5. Count that, 5 conference title games, all in the NFC with the Philadelphia Eagles. Went to a Super Bowl against, which he actually lost to Belichick and Brady, and then 0 Super Bowl wins. Like this whole, when the story about Belichick gets told, because you can have hiccups in your career and you can, or the career can kind of end and it's like, oh, it wasn't quite the old so-and-so that we remember them once to be. You think about Tom Brady's last year in Tampa Bay. It wasn't quite Tom Brady. Numbers actually weren't bad, but we know he was not the Tom Brady that we knew him to be. Aaron Rodgers at the end with, I think, what's going to be the case in Pittsburgh, certainly with the Jets, and his last year in Green Bay, not the old Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that necessarily dings his legacy. We still look at Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP, a Super Bowl champion, one of the greatest throwers. Tom Brady literally said the other day, Aaron's the most gifted thrower of the football ever. That's probably a majority opinion. There's no question about that. Look at all of these legends. Michael Jordan, it ended badly in Washington. Yeah, but no one really talks about Washington. Like, it's not, we don't talk about these legends. Kobe Bryant was the most inefficient player in basketball by a long shot at the end. But we remember the 60-point game. We obviously remember how incredible he was prior to the Achilles tear. The problem with Belichick is all of his success as a head coach has one common denominator, and it's Tom Brady. See, it'd be one thing if Brady left, went to Tampa, and was like good, kind of like, for example, like when Joe Montana, left the 49ers, went to the Kansas City Chiefs. He went to an AFC title game. Joe was still really good, right? I mean, like it still worked. Joe was an effective player, but not quite the Joe Montana that he was with Bill Walsh and the 49ers. And oh no, Tom Brady went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, by the way, coming off the 7-9 season, hadn't won a playoff game in almost 2 decades, and in a COVID year, they won the Super Bowl. They won a Super Bowl. Like, limited training camp, no OTAs, no preseason, and they won a championship. And the next year, he almost won league MVP. Not great. By the way, in that span, Belichick went 7-9, made the playoffs with Mac Jones, which, to his credit, that's quite impressive. But then they got trounced by Buffalo, and Belichick's the defensive mastermind, did not force a punt in that game. And then in 2022, it was a disaster. They missed the playoffs, losing record. 2023, they were one of the worst teams in football, and Belichick was basically forced out by Bob Kraft and the Kraft family. And so when you consider all of those factors, what is his legacy? See, he will, to Belichick's credit, his accomplishments as the defensive coordinator with the Giants, particularly that, I mean, literally his game plan against the K-Gun Buffalo Bills offense back in, I think that was Super Bowl 25 against the Buffalo Bills. That game plan is literally in the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Belichick, nobody can take away from the fact, all-time great defensive mind. Like, if he's got the horses, there's few better game planners in the history of football than one Bill Belichick. But he's poor at evaluating talent. Look at his last 10 drafts in New England. Abysmal. So bad. Remember that last draft or second to last draft, I think it was, in New England? Might have been the last one, where they took Cole Strange. Remember the Cole Strange pick? And Sean McVay and Les Snead, two guys who are excellent at their jobs. Les Snead, GM of the Rams, Sean McVay, coach of the Rams, are in a press conference literally laughing under their breath. Like, God, I can't believe they did this to Cole Strange. What are they doing? Belichick's a poor evaluator of talent. Belichick has had no success as a head coach. None. He's won one playoff game without Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest athlete in my mind in the history of team sports. What has he accomplished? And by the way, listen, I'm not saying that this game against TCU is necessarily going to be a look into what this year will be for North Carolina. The good news for North Carolina is the ACC is kind of weak, and their schedule reflects that. Like, they're going to lose to Clemson. That's really the only great team they played the rest of their schedule. They don't have to play Florida State. They don't have to play Miami, like some of the top contenders in the ACC. That's not going to be an issue. They don't play SMU. Here's the problem, though, for North Carolina and for Bill Belichick. All of the absolute nonsense that he has brought into this program. Matter of fact, can we go in? We did this at the end of Monday's show. Can we show the timeline of Bill Belichick at UNC? So he's hired by the team on the program on December 14th. Okay, so it's pretty quiet. Okay, all-time great coach is going to North Carolina. 2 months later, HBO announces that Hard Knocks will follow UNC, a college program. And then not even a week later, no, Hard Knocks actually isn't going to go through. It's reported that Jordan Hudson, Belichick's girlfriend, in which there's a 49-year age gap, and let's stop dancing around the fact that that's freaking weird. Can we please, I know I've seen folks that are trying to, it's as long as they're consenting adults. I get that. It's weird. Continue this. April 12th, again, Jordan Hudson's on the field at the UNC spring game. Not great. Let's continue this. April 27th is when you have the awkward CBS Sunday morning interview in which Belichick, who's the ultimate, he's his own guy the whole bit, and Jordan Hudson interjects to a question they didn't like, despite the fact that they've been very public about their relationship, but the journalist for CBS asked him a question about the relationship. That's a problem. Whatever. Terrible interview with CBS Sunday morning. A week or so later, Belichick releases a memoir. Okay. A few days later, reports say Jordan Hudson's banned from the facility. And later that day, no, she's not banned from the facility. UNC refuted those reports from legitimate sources. And then a few months later after that, Hulu announces, yes, actually, we are going to cover the North Carolina Tar Heels. And as a cherry on top, before the game yesterday, or on Monday night, there's Jordan Hudson on the field with Bill Belichick. What are we doing? The ultimate do your job, football first, no distractions, frowned on his players in New England, doing commercials, everything has been the absolute opposite of that. If I'm Tom Brady, I'd say Gronk more than anybody, because Gronk was the ultimate, especially in his younger days. Gronk is a party animal. That's Gronk. If I'm a Julian Edelman, if I'm all the great Patriots who maybe had more of a personality than they were allowed to show, and then they look at this, you're like, time out. You're out here coaching college kids, and we know college football so much about being a head coach. This matters. You're coaching young men. You're coaching guys that are still kind of growing up to a certain degree. You're like a father figure in some ways. And this is the example you're setting. Folks acted like Deion coming to Colorado was just it was the circus, and it was, the chains and the shades, and they bringing in Shador and Travis Hunter and all this drama. Oh my goodness. First of all, Deion was taking over a Colorado program. I've said it a million times. I'll say it again, that the previous year had won one game, lost their 11 games by an average of 29 points per. North Carolina was a bowl team last year. North Carolina's not trash. They're not a great program. They're not a trash program. By the way, plenty of NIL money. Michael Jordan's involved. That helps. All of the drama, all of the nonsense. And you get clocked by a team who's good, a team that maybe can make some noise in the Big 12, but as of today is not in the top 25. You're unable to make adjustments. Your defense, Belichick, the defensive wizard, gave up a 40-burger. Your ability to evaluate the quarterback position still is flawed, because we see the kid Max Johnson comes in, looks way better than the starter. This is who Belichick is. What are you without the greatest success of your career with Tom Brady? Because now when we look back, the first part of Tom's career when he was developing into he was a good quarterback, situationally excellent. We know he was clutch the whole bit, but those great New England Patriots defenses led the day, all of it. Once Tom got to an elite level, which you could argue probably the first year was around 06, 07, certainly 07, when he led the Patriots to an undefeated record through 50 touchdowns, Randy Moss, we remember that. From that point forward, 2011 Super Bowl against the Giants. Part of it was aided by a Wes Welker drop, but after the Wes Welker drop, can't get a stop on Eli and the Giants to close the game. That's part of the story. A few years later, you make your next Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks. Again, Belichick and the coaching staff do deserve credit for the Malcolm Butler pick at the 1 because they made a whole documentary about it. Kudos to them. Brian Flores deserves credit. Tom Brady was down 10 in the fourth quarter. The Legion of Boom led 2 scoring drives, and Butler, to his credit, made the greatest defensive play in Super Bowl history. A few years later, Atlanta Falcons. Defense gets torched in the first half, and then Tom Brady has the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. The next year, which is the most damning example of Belichick sabotaging Brady and sabotaging the Patriots, just by nothing else but sheer ego, gives up 41 points to Nick Foles, a backup quarterback, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Meanwhile, Tom Brady drops 33, which at the time was a Super Bowl record for points scored in a loss in a Super Bowl. That was since surpassed by Philadelphia a few years, about 5-6 years later. But Tom Brady throws for 500 yards, drops 33 points, is unstoppable in the second half, and you lose because he can't get a stop because he benched Malcolm Butler because of a personal gripe. You push the greatest you push the greatest player in the history of the NFL out the door, despite the fact, and I remember saying this on my show back in 2019, you can go way back in the archives and check, the weapons were the issue in New England. Did you see those receiving core? Tom Brady was literally seen on the sidelines, or seen in the huddle, I forget which. Can somebody effing get open? Kick Brady out, because I can win without Tom. And what have you been since? So nobody can take away from the fact that Belichick is one of the greatest defensive minds in the history of football. If he's got the horses, if he's got the Richard Seymours, the Teddy Bruschi's, the Ty Laws of the world, the Vince Wilforks, in some cases, Malcolm Butler, Stephon Gilmore, just list the great Patriots defenders, Rodney Harrison, all of these guys, Dante Hightower, McCourty. If he's got the horses, he's brilliant. But if he doesn't, if he can't evaluate the talent, because we know he struggles with that, look at his last 10 drafts in New England. He pushed the GOAT out the door and is nothing without him. Can we put up that number one more time? Put up his numbers without Tom. That's who he is. Wins 42% of his games. No division titles. Brady went and won a Super Bowl the first year that he left. And by the way, can we remember what Tom went through to win his first Super Bowl? So they beat Washington. Washington wasn't very good. Went to New Orleans, and I get it's the COVID year, but still, I would almost argue that makes it harder. That's why I've defended the Lakers in the bubble. They go to New Orleans against a team that had owned them in the regular season. He retired Drew Brees, beat the Saints. Went to Lambeau, played poorly in the second half, was great in the first half. Beat the MVP Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau. Super Bowl. It was more of a defensive line performance than anything. Brady was great in that Super Bowl. Beat the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. Went through a gauntlet of great quarterbacks and great defenses. Who are you, Bill? What are you without Tom Brady? That's the question. I'm not saying Belichick's not a great coach. I'm saying this elevation that has taken place over time, over the last, really his whole career. How we have elevated him to this level that he is just not. Bill Walsh changed. I think Bill Walsh is the greatest coach ever. Bill Walsh literally changed how offensive football is played and coached. Lombardi, Tom Landry, Jimmy Johnson. Like, you can look down the list. Jimmy Johnson obviously didn't have as long of a career as those guys. That's Jerry Jones' fault, as we know. But Andy Reid, again, Andy Reid was a great coach. Again, not an all-time great, but you need the great quarterbacks, obviously. But what are you without the great quarterbacks? Like, I actually checked at a legend. My Pittsburgh Steelers, Chuck Noll. Not great without Terry Bradshaw. Not the success. Not saying you got to be, the steel curtain and win all these Super Bowls, but something. Andy Reid went to conference championship games, went to a Super Bowl. Tom Landry went to multiple conference championship games without Roger Staubach. Like, this stuff matters. Bill's nothing without Tom, as a head coach at least. A lot of comments here. My man, Alfred Parsard Jr., my guy, the Carve Master. I do appreciate that nickname, Alfred. We may need to introduce that as like a part of like carving up the context, which, by the way, is coming up in about 10 to 12 minutes or so. Belichick lost his marbles toward the end of his NFL run. I'm not sure he had them to begin with. He won't be successful in the NCAA with the Tar Heels. He's never had to recruit and never had to coach kids, and his girlfriend is a distraction on the sideline. Of course she's a distraction. And by the way, she has led most of the nonsense surrounding the CBS interview. I talked about it on my show back in May. I remember doing a segment. It's on the YouTube channel where both of them are so public about their relationship. Very public. Instagram official, all of it. But then when they're asked about the relationship, oh, we're not going to talk about that. Bro, you're going to shove it in our face and now you want to talk about it? You're going to have to pick a side. If you want to be a private couple, fine. No worries. You do you. Consenting adults, whatever. But you can't play both sides of the fence. And let's stop acting like, folks, that the age gap is not a story. Like, people are kind of just glossing, it's kind of, he's got a young girl. It's weird. When you have folks that know Bill, as has been reported, that are kind of concerned about the old man, that's a thing. My man Ryan Flowers, who, by the way, came back last night with NFL matchups. Check out his show each and every week on the Grid Network and on his own YouTube channel. Bill is washed. I'm not sure Bill had it. Brady bought a Super Bowl to Tampa Bay his first year away from Bill. Yes, he did. Ryan, the college football he knew is not the same. It also feels like he hired his kids and his buddies. Yeah, I mean, his son is the defensive coordinator. Freddie Kitchens. Who thought it was a good idea to hire Freddie Kitchens as an OC? Freddie Kitchens bombed in Cleveland as a head coach. The second they fire him and get Kevin Stefanski, the Browns make the play. What are we doing? Okay, Alfred says Tom Landry is the greatest coach of all time. You can make that case. You can absolutely make that case. Again, kind of slow down at the end, but if you look at, and by the way, the Cowboys documentary on Netflix talked about this. You can slow down at the end. That's fine. But if you look back and it's like, there's one common denominator in all of your success. Start asking questions. Start asking real questions about how great were you? Again, when he had the horse defensively, great coach. No question about it. Can't take that away from him. But bad talent evaluator. If nothing else, can I tell you what? Because people make mistakes. We understand that. People make mistakes in regards to personnel. The most damning evidence that Belichick is a poor talent evaluator is when the Patriots had one of, if not the worst receiving core in football in 2019. Gronk had retired. Edelman was getting older. It was not a good receiving core at all. Belichick saw that receiving core, saw his quarterback, Tom Brady, who I think at the time was 42 years old, and said, Tom's the problem more so than the receivers. Because a lot of those guys came back in 2020. Says enough right there. All right, let's transition now to Coach. You guys think I ripped Belichick? I have ripped Nick Sirianni on this show many times over the years. I was very critical of him, and I still think, is he, in terms of split-second, gotta-have-it decisions, do I trust him? I really don't. I'll be honest with you. Do I think he's great situationally? The good news is for Philadelphia, they destroyed everybody last year, really outside the Rams in the playoffs, so they didn't really have to make any big situational calls. At least Nick Sirianni didn't. So I still have concerns there. But I have said, and I kind of had this epiphany after they won the Super Bowl against Kansas City. It's like, okay, well, Nick Sirianni is a Super Bowl winning coach, and by the way, went to another one. And if I don't think the OC was good in Philadelphia, Kellen Moore, which I did not, it can't just be the roster. Like we know, there's no sport where coaching is more important than the National Football League. No sport, at least in America. Okay, Nick Sirianni had to have something to do with this. Here's what I thought was interesting, if you think about last year, and then we'll get into what Nick Sirianni said at his presser yesterday. Remember when there was coming into the season? I remember discussing it on the show when I did not buy the Eagles last year because of how they finished 2023. Remember there were the rumors, Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, they don't really get along. And by the way, you could see that. They're two very different personalities. It gets diffused. You could say that's by winning, but Jimmy Johnson won back-to-back Super Bowls in Dallas and got fired. So that's something. Remember they beat the Carolina Panthers late in the season. I think this was week 14? I think it was week 14. They kind of escaped with a win at home against Carolina when Bryce Young was having his late season renaissance. The Eagles are on a winning streak. They're rolling. And A.J. Brown goes to the media and is like, You know, our passing game isn't great. It's like, bro, what are you doing? You're on a winning streak. Things are going well. You just killed the vibes. Brandon Graham, who retired after the Super Bowl, goes to the media and says, you know, Jalen and AJ don't have the greatest relationship. They're not exactly best friends. And Nick Sirianni has his team ready to play the next week, and they kind of destroyed my Pittsburgh Steelers. Go on to cruise, go 14-3. They win, I think, let's do the math here. I think it was 12 of their last 13 games the regular season. Obviously, they go on a dominant postseason run to win the Super Bowl. I've said the epiphany I had on Nick Sirianni. If you like Dan Campbell, which I do, I think my history on this show would tell you that. If you praise Dan Campbell's, man, he's this culture builder and he sets the standard, and you can't then turn around and say Nick Sirianni's not a good coach. I don't think he's a great coach. I think there's been some inflation on Nick Sirianni that I don't totally buy. But he's a good coach, and he sets a good culture. I say all of that to say this. He was asked by the media yesterday, because the Eagles obviously open the season tomorrow against their hated rival, the Dallas Cowboys, tomorrow in Philadelphia, and they're going to unveil the banner at Lincoln Financial Field. They asked Nick Sirianni about it. Here was his answer.
The last banner night in 2018, it's famous that the fans booed the Eagles at halftime because they weren't happy with the way things were going, albeit it was banner night. How do you feel about the fact that even though it is banner night for you guys, the fans will still have the standard of performing and winning at a high level?
Yeah, I didn't know it was banner night. We won't be out for that.
Okay, the only part I don't like about that, he's obviously lying. He knows it's banner night. Come on, he's the head coach of the defending champions. He knows that it's banner night. He's been around the NFL long enough to know. Nick Sirianni sometimes can come off as, it's weird to say this about an NFL head coach, but a bit immature. He knows that they're unveiling a banner at Lincoln Financial Field and the fans are going crazy, all of it. The thing that to me, because folks are blowing they're not going to be on the field for it. Oh my gosh. Folks are kind of blowing that out of proportion. And the reason I say that is from personal, it feels weird to say, but personal experience. I was actually at the 2021 NFL season opener in Tampa Bay at Raymond James Stadium. It was a great experience, amazing game. That was when Tom Brady was coming off his Super Bowl. Dak Prescott was coming off an ankle injury. It was a great back and forth game. Both Dak and Brady were fantastic. Brady ended up doing Brady things, leading a game-winning drive at the end. But I went back on my phone and looked at videos. And the videos I took, I was like, were the Bucs on the field? Because I don't remember the Bucs being on the field when they released the banner. They weren't. A lot of times the New England Patriots were not on the field. So that is getting blown out of proportion a little bit. Like, that is pretty commonplace for the team not to be on the sidelines to see the unveiled banner from the previous year's Super Bowl championship. But I love the approach. You've seen it from Jalen Hurts too. And maybe Nick Sirianni is taking this cue from his quarterback, because we know Jalen is the heart and soul of that Philadelphia Eagles team. He is an outstanding leader that we know. Going back to his days at Alabama, we knew that as a true freshman. It's this, okay, yeah, that was last year, and now we're moving forward. I kind of like it. It's unique. I've never seen a defending champion, unless you're thinking about like the late 90s Broncos or the late 90s Chicago Bulls, for example, where they won a championship and then they just gutted everything. Like, they won their final championship at least, and then they gutted everything, where it's like, yeah, of course they're not going to win the Super Bowl the following season. I've never seen a defending champion that goes into the season as the favorites to win the NFC. That is, you'll see where I have them on Bryson's best 10, but a lot of folks have them as the best team in football, understandably so. They cruised to the Super Bowl, rosters loaded, all of it. That's like, okay, that was then, this is now. It is very New England Patriots-esque. And by the way, I'm not saying the opposite of that is necessarily wrong. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, after they won their first Super Bowl night, it was Chris Jones or Tyreek Hill, I forget which of them it was, but they were like, yeah, they did the LeBron quote, not 2, not 3. It's like, okay, that's slow down a little bit. But then they win a Super Bowl a few years later, and they are very vocal. Yeah, we'd love to go back-to-back. No one's gone back-to-back in 2 decades. We want to be the first team to do it in that span. And they did it. Now, they were kind of quiet on the three-peat thing because that had never been done in the history of the league. But I'm not going to attack Philadelphia for using a strategy that no one's really ever used before. Because the fact of the matter is, they are going into the season knowing we're the biggest game in every team we play schedule. That's the reality of being the defending Super Bowl champion. I like the fact that Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts as well, and you could say Sirianni is taking his cue from Hurts to a certain degree because Hurts is the leader of the team, saying, that's great. 2025 is all that matters. It's very much, I know I just ripped Belichick, but it's very much a non to Cincinnati. What have you, Janet Jackson? I've always said the NFL's a Janet Jackson league. What have you done for me lately? And I think right now what you're looking at with Philadelphia is a team that is absolutely just locked in, laser focused, and is poised to have a fantastic year. I just saw we're live on X, by the way. So we're live on X. So for some reason we were dealing with some connection issues on there. So very excited that we are live on the Grid Network's X account. So feel free to check us out on there. Definitely want to make sure we get as much engagement as possible on that front. Just making sure on my phone that we're okay. Yeah, we're ready to go on X. So yeah, we're live now officially on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and on X. So feel free to chime in the comment section on any of the 4 platforms. We would love to hear what you have to say. Coming up after the break, man, I love Charles Barkley. Who doesn't love Charles Barkley? Maybe Shaq on some days, but he loves Charles Barkley. But what this man just said recently on a podcast can be described in no other term but insane. That is coming up next on Carving Up the Context. You do not want to miss what Charles said and what I have to say in response. Take a break on Carving Up Live. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. I appreciate everybody stopping by on this Wednesday. As I said at the top of the show, this is the first episode of Carving It Up where I go in and it just the vibe, the feeling, it's like, oh, it's football season. Carving Up the Context midway through the show at the 30-minute mark. It's following right after Bryce's Best 10. So stay tuned. Bryce's Best 10 coming up in 10 to 15 minutes. My first of the year, my top 10 teams in the National Football League as we go into week 1. Boy, is it so good to say those words. Football's back, ladies and gentlemen, and I am here for it. We all are. But a basketball topic, one that I did not think I'd be discussing, certainly as we're on the dawn of a new NFL season, Cowboys, Eagles, my prediction for that at the end of today's show. But I am absolutely flabbergasted at something Charles Barkley said on a recent podcast with the great Bill Simmons. So, first and foremost, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I wanted to talk about something that Charles Barkley, one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA, and I do not want to shortchange that with everything I'm about to say in the next few minutes, because Charles Barkley is, folks of my generation, and maybe even a little bit older, think of Charles like, oh, he's the funny guy inside the NBA. Like, he played, but like Shaq's the legend, and Kenny won championships. Charles didn't win any NBA championships. Charles is an MVP. Charles, and I think I read 11-time All-Star, one of the greatest players of all time. 1993 MVP, 93 MVP. Go back and look at what he did in those finals against Michael Jordan and the Bulls. Charles was an all-time great player, and nobody can take that away from him. With that being said, Charles Barkley being Charles Barkley, he tends to say some absolutely outlandish things. I don't think anything he said will top what you're about to hear over the next 41 seconds. This is Chuck talking about the NBA second apron and why he's in favor of it on the Bill Simmons podcast. Take a listen to Chuck.
Cut the bullshit. They ain't got no dumb rules. Let me tell you something. I'm so glad you asked that question.
Is this a second apron defense?
Yes. Why did they have to come up with bullshit rules, Bill? Because all these guys want to play together and not compete. If I had $1 for every time I heard the second apron, Why did Adam Silver have to put the second apron in? Because LeBron got all his guys together. KD wanted to go play with the Warriors. I hate when I hear, man, the second apron's not fair. What do you mean it's not fair? If y'all stop all wanting to play together, we wouldn't have to make up bogus-ass rules to stop y'all from playing together.
There's a part of that I want to replay again. Charles Barkley, just one more time. What were you talking about with the second apron?
Why did they have to come up with bullshit rules, Bill? Because all these guys want to play together and not compete. If I had $1 for every time I heard the second apron, why did Adam Silver have to put the second apron in? Because LeBron got all his guys together. KD wanted to go play with the Warriors.
Is this you, bro? Is that... Looks like you in the middle there, and to your right is Clyde Drexler, and to your left is that Hakeem Olajuwon, one of the 12 greatest players in NBA history and the greatest defensive player of all time? Is that who I see in that photo? Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's who that is. So again, I'm not even going to rip Chuck for the decisions he made in his career that I'm about to discuss. I'm ripping his lack of consistency on it. This is carving up the context. We dig a little bit deeper. His last year in Philadelphia was 1992. He was one of the best players in basketball, round amount of rebound, led the Sixers to the playoffs, but they just couldn't get over the hump, kept losing to the Bulls in the postseason. Charles had a quote, because his mentor, his father figure in some ways, or older brother in some ways, in Philadelphia, was the late, great Moses Malone, who I've said is probably the most underrated player in NBA history. The man won 3 MVPs and was part of one of the greatest teams ever, the 83 Sixers. That's another conversation for another day. Moses Malone was a legend. Charles once said, and I actually have the quote right here. He was told by Sixers management, by Phil Jasner, from the Philadelphia Daily News. Phil called me. This is from Charles. Phil calls me. He says, Charles, can you talk? I said, Phil, it's like 6 a.m. He says, the Sixers made a trade. You need to talk about it. I need your opinion. Barkley continues. I said, well, what'd they do? He said, traded the number 1 pick in the draft. I said, what? That's all we got for the number 1 pick was Roy Henson? And he says, oh, and they traded Moses to Washington. That was the beginning of the end, where I could have actually had a really good team. That wrecked my entire Philadelphia career, and that was the biggest disaster of my career, plain and simple. So Charles Barkley, and I don't fault him for this in the slightest. As a matter of fact, I commend him for this. Said, oh, yeah, okay, it's not going to work long-term in Philadelphia. I'm not going to finish my career here the way that I thought I would. I don't have any MVPs. I don't have any championships. I want to compete. I'm a competitive guy. I want to beat Michael Jordan in the playoffs. I want to get over the hump. I want to hold that Larry O'Brien trophy. And so he spent that whole last year in Philadelphia pretty disgruntled. Didn't officially ask for a trade, but he clearly wanted to be traded. He gets moved to a Phoenix Suns team that, by the way, have been to multiple conference finals in the years leading up to them trading for Charles. So they add Charles, and they go to a finals and push the Chicago Bulls pretty far in that 93 series. It took, again, John Paxson at the game-winning shot. Jordan was great in that series, the whole bit. And then Phoenix disintegrates, and he says, dang it, man. Could I go to Houston? A team that in two of the previous 3 years prior to Charles joining had won 2 championships, had Hakeem Olajuwon, who at that point was still undeniably, it was a 26-10 guy, was one of the greatest players of all time, was one of the top 3 players in basketball at that point. Chuck was still a 20-point-per-game guy going into that. Like that, this isn't, oh, Charles was old, oh, Hakeem was old, and they just tried to kind of like, remember when the Lakers in 2021, where it was like Bron and AD were great, but it was Rondo and Westbrook and Dwight Howard, like well past their prime guys. No, this was not that. These were, Hakeem was still amazing. So was Barkley. Drexler wasn't quite, but he was still an impact player. Just a year off of winning a championship. Try to go win the Western Conference. Weren't able to. I'm not even killing Chuck for that. But he saw his current situation in Philadelphia at that time in the early 90s. After they traded Moses Malone, after the Sixers front office had made some poor decisions, he said, okay, it's not going to work for me long term. I want to be a winning basketball player, so I got to go to a winning franchise. So he went to Phoenix. So it's a problem when LeBron does it with leaving Cleveland? It's a problem when LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavaliers plays 7 years, goes to multiple conference finals, goes to an NBA Finals in 07, which, by the way, partly to get to that NBA Finals, he takes on the Detroit Pistons, who have won a championship and been to another Finals, scored 29 of the last 30 points of the game. I hope I'm getting that stat right. Gets to the NBA Finals, gets swept by the Duncan Spurs. That team was on a roll, obviously. All of those components. And LeBron's looking around, okay, I've got multiple MVPs. I'm dragging Zydrunas Ilgauskas and Mo Williams to 60 wins. Why don't I get my buddies together? Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. Let's go to Miami and make this work. And it did work. He won 2 championships, went to the finals every single year he was there. 2011 was a disaster. We all know that. But 12 to 14, he was, without question, the best player in basketball. Won multiple rings, multiple MVPs, multiple finals MVPs. Kevin Durant. 9 years in Oklahoma City. League MVP, 4 scoring titles. Multiple conference finals, went to a finals in 2012. They lose that 3-1 lead in 2016 to the Golden State Warriors. And he looks at his situation. KD's a free agent that summer. Keep in mind, here's what's really important too. Charles wanted out of Philadelphia while he was still under contract with Philadelphia. LeBron James left when he was a free agent. Kevin Durant left when he was a free agent. They were not under contract when they left their organizations. I don't begrudge anybody for forcing a trade. But you were still technically under contract with Philadelphia. Don't rip a guy when he's got the opportunity to make a decision for what's best in his career when you did the same thing. Kevin Durant, one of the 3 best players in basketball at this point. No question about it. It was like no order. It was Bron, Steph, KD. Those are the 3 best. And he looked at his situation. He saw, okay, Westbrook can be a little erratic in the playoffs. He had a very bad last 3 games of that conference finals against the Warriors. Clay had the game 6. Steph was great in game 7. KD was contacted by the Warriors. Now, what's he supposed to do? Like, I've defended the Warriors and KD on both sides. Like, KD's available. The Warriors are supposed to not call him. They're supposed to not call a 4-time scoring champion and MVP at the peak of his powers. Kevin Durant is not supposed to meet with the franchise that could help provide him his first championship. He's supposed to not go to that team because that makes him less competitive. And Barkley acts like dynasties are, man, there's just this new thing. These super teams, man, we've never seen any super teams. Oh, yeah, kind of like the Lakers and the Celtics. People don't know this. Well, I don't say people don't know this. People don't know this. In the 1980s, folks, you want to know how many teams went to the NBA Finals in that decade? 5. Lakers, Sixers, Celtics, Rockets, Pistons. That's it. And the league soared in popularity. Matter of fact, the league was saved by Magic and Bird because it had gone through a disastrous decade in the 70s when there wasn't a dynasty. And the 90s, oh, listen. And I know the relationship is fractured now, but Charles Barkley and everybody of that era just falls at the feet of Michael Jordan. All hail the great Michael Jordan, we know who Michael Jordan is. That goes without saying. League's at the peak of popularity when Jordan and the Bulls reel off 6 championships in 8 years. You didn't have a problem with super teams then. You didn't have a problem trying to form your own super team in Houston. You didn't have a problem forcing your way out of Philadelphia when it was the best decision for your career to go to a contender. Don't begrudge you for any of that. Just don't bash the current players for doing the same. Don't defend an indefensible second apron, which I've talked about how it kills dynasties. But Bill Simmons, to his credit, talked about this in the interview with Chuck. He mentioned, because we all know Simmons is a diehard Celtics fan. So he talked about, the Celtics had to move on from Drew Holiday and Porzingis. Like, financially, it just couldn't work to keep that team together. But he also mentioned the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that just won 68 games with almost entirely homegrown talent. Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams. Shea wasn't drafted by the Thunder. He was traded to the Thunder a year into his career. So he might as well be homegrown. The Thunder are now going to have to go through a period. This is why I've said, let's slow down in the OKC as a dynasty thing. They're going to have to let go of guys like Alex Caruso or Isaiah Hartenstein. If they want to keep Shea, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren together, bench depth might be gone. A team gets punished for drafting well. I thought the whole point of the draft was to take a guy, develop him, and him be on your team, and him be an impact player. This new CBA does the exact opposite of that. So love and respect Charles Barkley. We all love Chuck. Inside the NBA is the greatest basketball show of all time. We know this. And Chuck's one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. No questions asked. But this is an insane take, and it's an unbelievably hypocritical take. Love you, Charles. But this is nutso. So in this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I mean, what are we doing? You're ripping Kevin Durant, LeBron James for doing exactly what you did twice. Keep that same energy for those guys that you had for your own career. I'm not going to be petty and, oh, Charles has no rings. There's some great players who don't have rings. I don't want to do that. But you made the decisions that were in the best interest of your career to win. Good on you. Matter of fact, I have more respect for you for doing that. And I have more respect for LeBron James and Kevin Durant for doing the same. Not everybody can be Tim Duncan drafted to a great organization in San Antonio. Not everybody can be the Warriors were a trash organization when Steph got there, which is partly why I elevate him so high. But once they got the right ownership, what was Steph going to do? Leave? Like Michael Jordan. After a while, they got the coach right. Was Jordan going to leave? It's unbelievable. By the way, he didn't team up with his buddies, but you know who else left their original team? His partner, Shaq. There were some issues with the front office. Didn't feel the roster was necessarily up to par in terms of what he believed a championship contender could be. And so Shaquille O'Neal left the Magic in 1996, went to the Lakers, and the rest is history. Kudos to Shaq for making that decision. Kudos to Chuck for making the decisions he made twice to go to indirectly force his way out of Philadelphia and then to go to Houston. Good on him. Got no problems with that. Don't rip Kevin Durant and LeBron James for doing the exact same thing. And by the way, to me, the ultimate insult and saying they don't want to compete. Did you not want to compete when you left Philadelphia? Was that what it was? Let's stop this nonsense. You'll love Charles Barkley, but that's insane. Got some comments. Yeah, by the way, yeah. Alfred, don't forget Scottie Pippen was on that Rockets team too. Not that Rockets team. By the time Scottie got there, I guess this was 1999 when Scottie Pippen got there because that was right after, obviously, he had won 6 titles in Chicago. That team was not quite the same. Scottie wasn't the same player Chuck. That's partly because I actually did go back. I was like, man, Chuck was with Hakeem and Scottie, and they weren't the same versions of themselves at that point. But Drexler was a version of that. Hakeem was still A+ Hakeem, and Charles Barkley was still at least A- Charles. So, like, we've got to stop with this. Just, these new players, they don't care about competing. Stop. You did the same thing. And Alfred also says the weight game also hurt Chuck in the 90s too. Yeah, like, and Charles, to his credit, has been vocal about that. He's taken accountability. He didn't take care of his body the way they should have, the way that the Jordans of the world and the Hakeems of the world did in that decade. But man, we've got, and this, I've talked about this. I won't go into a whole diatribe, but I've talked about this extensively on the show. Like this, and you only really see it in the NBA. I don't think you really see it in baseball anymore. I think there was a period where that was the case, but I don't really see it in baseball. I don't see it at all in football. I mean, Tom Brady speaks glowingly of Patrick Mahomes, of the new batch of superstar quarterbacks, loves them. Troy Aikman saying, again, I'm just talking about Hall of Fame quarterbacks or broadcasters, but those are the voices we hear the most. I don't know what it is in the NBA where it's shocking when an all-time great player compliments the current generation of guys or guys who came in future generations. Larry Bird, Jerry West would do this. Like guys who Michael Jordan, by the way, to a degree, but Michael Jordan will give love where it's due. Charles, Shaq to a degree. Again, love these guys. But Magic Johnson occasionally will do this where it's, oh man, they could have never survived in my era. The great Oscar Robertson. Oh man, we'd have just roughed Steph up. Yeah, that's, I've always said, that's code for, yeah, we couldn't have stopped him. That's what that's code for. We couldn't have stopped him. There's no question about it. This gatekeeping that happens in the NBA has got to stop. It drives me absolutely insane. And Charles just did it in that interview with Bill Simmons. All right. So Let's okay. So let's go ahead and go to Bryson's best 10. So my top 10 teams in the National Football League. It feels so good to come back and do this again. It's one of my favorite segments to do each and every week. My top 10 teams in the National Football League. Let's just get right to it. Let's get the background music going. Okay, we will start. Bryson's best 10 right now. My 10th best team in the National Football League is the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are the 10th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So retaining Terry McLaurin was massive for this team. Not that I didn't think an extension wouldn't get done, but you have Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin. You have Austin Eckler, who's one of the better two-way backs in the National Football League. They added Deebo Samuel, which I don't think will be as big of a pickup as some Commanders fans are hoping, just because he's had some weight issues. He's struggled to stay healthy. We know he plays a very physical brand of football, but I do think he can be a good gadget guy offensively and help Washington's offense. The only thing that you're like, Bryson, they made the NFC Championship game last year. Like, I still don't trust the defense. And Dan Quinn's a defensive coach, so he'll get the absolute most he can out of this group. But defensively, I do not trust a Washington team that was abysmal, that needed Jaden Daniels to have the greatest rookie season that we've ever seen from a quarterback in the National Football League that he did. I've said coming this year, I think Washington's absolutely a playoff team. I docked them one win from what they had a year ago. I think they'll go 11-6, be a wild card team. I want to see this Commanders team do something that they weren't really capable of doing, particularly at the end of last year, where it's, if Jaden doesn't quite have it, if he plays a B to B plus at best game, can they win ugly? Can they win 21-17 instead of having to win, 28-24? Like, can they win ugly, rough and tumble football games? Jaden Daniels, I think, is fully capable of having a big second year. I don't see a sophomore slump. He could maybe be an MVP candidate. Who knows? But the Washington Commanders are the 10th best team in the National Football League. The team they actually beat in the first round of the playoffs is at number 9. At number 9, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are the 9th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. I said on my prediction show, and the clips are on social media now, I think Tampa Bay is going to have the best offense in the National Football League this season. Where's the weakness? Baker just threw 41 touchdowns last year. I feel like that kind of went under the radar because Joe Burrow had a great statistical season, and Lamar and Josh Allen won MVP. We just kind of skimmed over, oh yeah, Baker threw 41 touchdowns. By the way, with Chris Godwin out the entire second half of the year. So what did the Bucs do? Well, they have Mike Evans, who's going to try and go for Jerry Rice's record, or to pass Jerry Rice's record for the most 1,000-yard seasons to start a career. He's trying to do it for the 12th season in a row, which is remarkable. You have Chris Godwin coming back off injury. You drafted Emeka Egbuka, who was awesome at Ohio State. Not Jeremiah Smith, but he was excellent. K. Dotton's a solid tight end. Bucky Irving, the Bucs have a real running game. Bucky Irving is great. They actually just recently locked up Luke Gedeke, so the O-line is sneakily one of the better units in the National Football League. Defensively, there are some questions, but I'm telling you, if Tampa Bay goes on a run to the NFC Championship game, I'm not picking it, but I will not be shocked. I think Tampa Bay is going to score a ton of points on teams this year. Baker, I've said before the year, Baker's going to be an MVP candidate. The Bucs are the 9th best team in the National Football League. At number 8, I want to put them higher. I just have too many concerns when it pertains to their quarterback's health. At number 8, it is the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are the 8th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. Again, the Stafford health thing is real. Stafford is going into year 17, like the back issues. We know that held him out of a lot of camp. He's healthy. He's ready to go. Sean McVay announced that he is going to start against the Houston Texans on Sunday, which is great. Listen, LA is very much in a we're in win now mode. This could very well be like I don't want to say a last dance type of situation, but you could see if Stafford retires. Sean McVay nearly retired a few years ago. The offense is loaded. We know Stafford's excellent when he's healthy. Kyron Williams running the football. They locked him up long term. They've got Puka Nacua, who is one of the 5 best receivers in football, or I think will emerge as that as the season goes on. And the number 2 receiver now, they went from my man Cooper Kupp to Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams is now really, for the first time ever, a number 2 receiver in his career with elite quarterback play. So I love that. O-line's good. Defensively, I said before the year, I think Jared Verse, he was my pick to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think Jared Verse is going to be a monster, is going to wreak havoc on offenses around the National Football League this year. I do have some questions about the linebacking core, but generally speaking, this Rams team is good top to bottom. I just have too many questions about the health of their quarterback. Sean McVay, by the way, to me, is the second best coach in football to Andy Reid. At number 7, this is probably the lowest I've had this team in like 2 years because I've been so pro this team over the last few seasons on carving it up. But at number 7, it is the Detroit Lions. The Lions are the 7th best team in the National Football League. And before I tell you why, Dan Campbell, what are y'all going to do all season long?
Kneecap.
It's so good to hear that soundbite once again. Everyone's going to get a kneecap. So listen, here's the thing with Detroit. The reason I have them at 7, not higher. The offense is still amazing. You have Jared Goff, who's a top 12 quarterback in my estimation. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a monster year. Amon-Ra St. Brown's an excellent wide receiver. Again, they had some reduction at the tight end position from Sam Laporta a year ago. There were some injuries there. I think Sam Laporta is going to have a good year. I have 3 major questions about Detroit. Number 1, loss of Frank Ragnow on that offensive line matters. Frank Ragnow was a monster on Detroit's O-line, which was, I think, last year, along with Philly, the best unit in the National Football League, their offensive line. Offensively, again, no Ben Johnson. He took the Chicago Bears job. Didn't we kind of all hail, rightfully so, Ben Johnson as the premier offensive coordinator in football last season? Going from him to somebody else, like, that's going to be a dip. You go from Aaron Glenn, who, again, you look at the Lions' defensive numbers last year and like, oh, Aaron Glenn wasn't that good. Yeah, the team was absolutely decimated by injuries, most notably with Aiden Hutchinson, who's coming back. Aiden Hutchinson's my comeback player of the year prediction, so I think he's going to step up big and have a big-time year. But Aaron Glenn's one of the top defensive coordinators in football. So the Lions, I said a year ago, they went from having 3 head coaches in their staff, which I said last season, Campbell, Johnson, and Glenn, to now just Dan Campbell. But still, it's a very good roster. The offense is going to put up big numbers once again. I just have some concerns with the O-line, and the defense, just by having healthy bodies, will be better than they were a year ago. They'll be a real contender. They're my pick before the year to go to the NFC title game. So Detroit, I still back you guys. The Lions are the 7th best team in the National Football League. At number 6, again, I'm buying the hype on this team as a real threat in the AFC. The Denver Broncos. Denver is the 6th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. There's not much not to like about this team other than some of the concerns they have at wide receiver. I'll say this on the front end. Mile high, we know the ball travels. That's why some kickers have been successful in Denver. I don't think I said this on the prediction show, and I stand by it. I do not think Tyreek Hill will finish the season as a Miami Dolphin. Denver, potentially. Tyreek Hill, Cortland Sutton. Watch out for the Denver Broncos to go after Tyreek Hill, but I digress. But seriously, though, Bo Nix, 29 touchdown passes as a rookie, highly impressive. Was outshone by Jaden Daniels just because Jaden Daniels was even better, but a great rookie season from Bo Nix. The Broncos O-line, one of the best in football. They have a solid, again, play calling wise, Sean Payton's great. The strength of this team is their defense, a defense that led the NFL in sacks a year ago, and they just so happen to add Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. I love Talanoa Hufanga. He's one of my favorite defensive players in football. Again, both have injury concerns. I get that. But absent those guys, it's an awesome defense. You add those guys to the mix, you've got a real Super Bowl threat on your hands, a team that's going to give defenses hell, give offenses hell all season long. Listen, the division they play in is brutal. The AFC West is a monstrous division, but I think Bo Nix is going to make that year 2 jump. You might have some folks saying, hey, is Bo Nix the MVP? I think you could see a mid-season trade. They can add a Tyreek Hill or somebody of that nature. Even if they don't, they run the football effectively. O-line's great. Bo Nix is going to make the year 2 jump. The Broncos, with that great O-line, listen, they're great in the trenches, and that we know that matters in the National Football League. The Denver Broncos are the 6th best team in the National Football League. At number 5, a team that made probably the acquisition of the, off-season and training camp and preseason, it is the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are the 5th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So, listen, I had, before the Micah Parsons trade, I had Green Bay winning the division. I had them going 12-5. I said that Jordan Love, you'll see more of these second half of 2023 Jordan Love this year than you did last year's Jordan Love, who I did not think after that first game against Philly was healthy at all. He got hurt again midway through the year. He was never quite himself. Josh Jacobs was 3rd in the league in rushing last year. You already had a solid receiving core, actually a really good one, with guys like Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed. You've got Tucker Kraft, the tight end, and you drafted Matthew Golden out of Texas, who is one of my favorite wide receiving prospects in the draft a season ago. I think he is going to emerge as their true number 1 guy. Look at Green Bay's defense last year. They were 5th and 6th as it pertains to yards and points allowed. Great defense that added Micah Parsons. And if you think Green Bay is going to run the football effectively, have Jordan Love, throw it over the top, have leads essentially is what I'm saying, Micah Parsons will be able to tee off, go after the quarterback. He missed 4 games and still had 12 sacks a season ago. Yes, he's not good at stopping the run, but everyone has weaknesses. He's not Myles Garrett or TJ Watt. He's absolutely in that tier below that. He's going to have a big-time year. He's going to have a lot to prove. I love Micah Parsons saying the other day, or yesterday I think it was, hey, now I can focus on football. It's amazing what happens when you leave the most toxic franchise in the National Football League, along with the Browns and the Jets. Micah Parsons, Jordan Love, Green Bay Packers love a big year. They are the 5th best team in the National Football League. By the way, Matt LaFleur is an amazing coach as well. At number 4, a team that I think is going to get the top seed in the AFC, it is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are the 4th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So Josh Allen's the league MVP. We know this. James Cook, they locked up long-term. I don't know if I'm crazy about that contract long-term, if I'm a Bills fan, just in terms of how it will age. But the fact of the matter is this. James Cook runs the football effectively. Deion Dawkins and that offensive line, Buffalo, is, again, I keep talking about great offensive lines, but that matters. It's one of the best units in the National Football League. There's no questions about it. And I think what you're going to see from Buffalo, Keon Coleman, if you hear the reports that's coming out of camp and what guys in Bill's training camp on the team are saying, this kid, Keon Coleman, who had a solid rookie year but didn't quite do what folks in Buffalo thought he would, he will emerge as a true wide receiver one. I think he'll help Josh win league MVP. Dalton Kincaid's a great tight end. The only reason I don't elevate them above 4 is because of their defense. Again, they were dreadful in the second half of last year. They did add Joey Bosa, so that does help. There's no questions about that. Sean McDermott is a defensive coach. There's a lot of pressure on this team to, can they finally get past Kansas City? Josh has got an MVP. They were so close a year ago. They've been so close multiple times. Can they get to the Super Bowl? I think they're definitely going to go to the AFC title game. Will they win it? We'll see. But listen, I think Josh is going to have a little bit of a Peyton Manning 2013 where it's defense isn't very good. You're going to have to account for 50 touchdowns. I think Josh is going to do that. That's why he's my pick to win league MVP. But it's still a well-balanced offense. I just have too many concerns on the defensive side of the ball. The Buffalo Bills are the 4th best team in the National Football League. At number 3 is a team you could argue has the best roster in football. It is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are the 3rd best team in the National Football League, and here's why. Even as a Steelers fan, I can be objective. So it's funny, Lamar's won 2 league MVPs, and most would argue his best season of his career was last year. I defended Josh winning MVP just from the standpoint of Josh still gave you the upside without the downside of the atrocious turnovers, but that's a discussion for 2024, obviously. But Lamar has improved drastically. He is underratedly so one of the better passers in football. We know what he brings with his legs. Derrick Henry, I said before the year, I think we'll see a slight drop-off. Not a crazy one, but I don't think Derrick's going to go for nearly 2,000 yards as he did a season ago. So I think you'll see a little bit of a dip from Derrick Henry. He is going into year 10 after all. But the O-line of Baltimore's really good. The coaching staff is excellent. The defense was one of the best in football in the second half, or really post-bye of last year, if you look at Baltimore after they got off to kind of a slow start. DeAndre Hopkins, again, he's not the old DeAndre Hopkins, I get that, but I think he'll have a good impact to be a good influence on Zay Flowers, kind of help the kid mature a little bit to a certain degree. 2 good tight ends in Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews. Again, running game's good, defense is stacked. There's really not much not to like about this Baltimore Ravens team. There's a lot of folks that are picking them to win the AFC, and you understand that. Can Lamar take that next step as an excellent playoff quarterback? He had a great game against my Steelers, but a lot of quarterbacks do against Mike Tomlin in the playoffs in the last decade, let's be honest. And then Buffalo, disastrous first half. They played quite well in the second half. Again, if not for the Mark Andrews mistakes, they didn't beat Buffalo in Orchard Park, New York. You never know. So this is a great Baltimore Ravens team. A lot of momentum from a season ago. They were arguably the best team in football over the last month of the 2024 regular season. The Ravens are the 3rd best team in the National Football League. At number 2 is the 3-time defending AFC champions. It is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are the 2nd best team in the National Football League. And here's why. I've said it all offseason. This idea that this team is going to take this massive dip is insane to me. Do we forget that they won 15 games last year, despite the fact that their receiving core and running game, by the way, was ravaged by injuries? Rashee Rice is gone for the first 6 games. That matters. That will hurt Kansas City in the first month and a half. But you have Hollywood Brown. You have Xavier Worthy, who really came on at the end of last season. Travis Kelce isn't still peak Travis Kelce. There's no question about that. But he's in the midst, no question, of a love story with Taylor Swift. He said during this offseason, 2024 offseason, a little bit distracted. I'm working on routines for the Eras Tour. I'm locked in, focused on football. He put a ring on it. Travis is not going to be quite peak Travis Kelce. He will have a bounce back 2025 year. The defense is still excellent. Trent McDuffie is one of the best corners in football. Chris Jones is probably the best situational defensive player in the NFL. You got a great defensive coordinator in Spags. Andy Reid, we know who Andy Reid is. And by the way, Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback. And if we know anything about Patrick Mahomes, it's that he literally always goes to the AFC Championship game at a minimum. Pat has heard the hate. Pat has heard the talk. Josh Allen's better. Oh, the light show's gone. You're not the same player you used to be. Pat's going to have a big-time season in 2025. The Chiefs are the second best team in the National Football League. And, of course, that leaves number one, the defending Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are the best team in the National Football League, and here is why. Again, it's them or Baltimore to me that has the two best rosters in football. I mean, find me the weakness. Jalen Hurts, who folks perceive as the weakness, which oddly doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Multiple offensive coordinators, multiple, again, changes to the defense in terms of coaching. Most folks don't think Nick Sirianni is that good of a coach. I'm not one of them. I think he's a solid coach. Excellent wide receiving core. And Jalen Hurts gets the job done in Super Bowls. He stared the best player in the sport down in the Super Bowl twice. Almost played him to a draw the first time in Mahomes' best Super Bowl. And then last year absolutely torched the Kansas City defense, which was one of the best in football. But I digress. Jalen Hurts is excellent. Saquon Barkley coming off a 2,000-yard season, Offensive Player of the Year, cover of Madden, backwards hurdled the Jacksonville Jaguars. Saquon's going to have a big year. Maybe not 2,000 yards, but Saquon's going to be great. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. O-line's still great. Again, making sure Lane Johnson's off the injury report. Johnson, Mailata, Jurgens. They're stacked up front. Defensively, Jalen Carter, you have Cooper DeJean, obviously, and Quinyon Mitchell. Zach Bond, they were able to lock up long term. I don't know if Bond will have quite the season he had a year ago, but it's a stacked roster. And by the way, their offensive coordinator is no longer Kellen Moore. They won a Super Bowl with Kellen Moore as the OC. Without him, I think they could be an even better offense, particularly in the pass game, which I think Jalen will take the next step on that front. The Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions, are the best team in the National Football League. And before we get to the comments, go ahead and put up the top 10 right here. Oh, that's the top 10 quarterbacks. My bad. That's a wrong graphic. But there's my top 10 quarterbacks. Okay, there we go. Top 10 teams in the NFL. 10-1, I've got the Commanders, the Buccaneers, the Rams, the Lions, the Broncos, and in the top 5, the Packers, the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Philadelphia Eagles. So there we go. That's what I got. In the comment section, Barry Grant Jr., All Even Podcast. The Carve Master has to be one of the worst names I've heard for you, bro. LOL. Listen, am I crazy about it? Yeah, actually I am. Alfred, don't cave to this man's hate. Shout out to Barry Grant Jr., the host of the All Even Podcast, who, by the way, I just got to say, while we're on the Eagles train and before we go to break, I don't know if Barry's still in here. Check out his NFL preview show. He did not a show, but it was about a half-hour long segment where he gave his picks, him, Claw, Nicole and the ones and twos, the whole bit. Great show, All Even Podcast. Check his stuff out. Check out the Metropolitan Report. Check out everybody at the Grid, obviously. I gotta say, Barry, you just sort of flippantly threw out man, Jalen Hurts isn't that good. Have you seen his numbers? I don't know. He counted for over 30 touchdowns last year and torched a dynasty in the Super Bowl. That feels kind of important. I don't know. You talk to me. Do we have? I feel like, do we have the two graphics? There we go. We've got the two graphics of Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. This was him in his first one. He had 304 yards. He had 370 yards of offense, completed 71% of his throws, 4 touchdowns total, 80 QBR from 0 to 100, passer rating over 100, and the Eagles scored 35 points. And in the second Super Bowl, which the Eagles won, of course, accounted for nearly 300 yards. 3 touchdowns total, 2 passing, 1 rushing, no turnovers, QBR of, he had a turnover in that game. 75 QBR, passer rating of 119, which is incredible. And the Eagles scored 40 points. Now, 7 of that came on a pick 6 by Cooper DeJean. But, that game was, I don't want to say over at halftime because the Chiefs do have a history of comebacks, but that's what we've got. All right, so we'll come back after the break and talk about Cowboys-Eagles. We're talking about a lot of Philadelphia Eagles today. We've got an NFL game to predict on the show. Cannot wait to get to it. Tune in and stay tuned, rather, after a 1-minute break. Cowboys-Eagles, my prediction for the season opening game after this 1-minute break. Welcome back to Carving It Up Live. Before I get to my Cowboys-Eagles prediction, just wanted to remind everybody out there that maybe didn't see the show on Monday. Saturday morning, we are launching a brand new college football podcast here on the Grid Network. It is called the Saturday Morning Tailgate. Myself, Tim Barnard, Arthur Hurst, all three of us obviously at the Grid, diehard college football fans. I'm a Vols fan. Tim's a Gators fan. Boo. And Arthur Hurst is a fan of the defending champion Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll be live at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday morning to talk all college football. We'll give our top 25 reaction to some of the biggest headlines and what was an amazing, lived up to the hype week one in the sports. We'll talk about our own individual teams, Tennessee, Florida, Ohio State. Of course, we'll give our best gambling picks of the week, our favorite game that you should take. And of course, at the end, we'll make our picks for the college football week two, capped obviously by a huge game between the Oklahoma Sooners and the Michigan Wolverines. That's going to be a fun one for week two, your week two slate of college football. Also, stay tuned to the end of the show after my prediction for this game, because I've also got an announcement for something else that I'm going to be a part of. So definitely stay tuned for that at the end of the show. We've got a football game tomorrow night. I cannot wait. I am overjoyed. I know that there's a lot of, oh man, this could kind of be a blowout, and it may not be the entertaining game that folks are hoping that it'll be. Let me tell you something right now. The Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles to kick off the new 2025 NFL season in Philadelphia. The Eagles, as of this live show, are an 8.5-point favorite, which is tied with the Broncos against the Titans this weekend for the biggest spread of the week. So Vegas, the bettors, love Philadelphia in this game. You understand that. They're clearly a better roster than the Cowboys. That goes without saying. Quarterback position, I'm a Dak guy. I think it's close, but it's absolutely fair to have Jalen Hurts above Dak. Receiving core, Philly. Running game, not even close, Philly. O-line, not close, Philly. Defense, not even in the same stratosphere, Philly. Coaching staff, I don't know. Let's see what Brian Schottenheimer brings to the table. Here's what I will say. When it comes to, and it's a shame. It's a shame that this game is not being played on Sunday. Because if it were, this would be one of my if I were a bet man games. For folks to know, I had a rough year last year. We're going to bounce back in 2025. For those who don't know, if I were a bet man is a segment I do. I don't bet, but there's 3 games that I pick each and every week that if I were a bet man, I would absolutely take this line. I love Dallas plus 8.5. Here's why. There's a few reasons. Number one, from the Dallas side, there is no pressure. This is the rare Cowboys game. What are we going to go to the defending champs after we just traded our best player and win? Like, you crazy? No. All the bad press is at Jerry, not the players. Dak can kind of play free. Brian Schottenheimer, I don't know. Anyone talk about Brian Schottenheimer? They probably will at some point this year. Oh, this guy's in over his head. What was Jerry thinking? And not yet. He's never coached a game in the NFL as a head coach. So no pressure on the Cowboys on that front. Also, on the offensive side of the ball, so CeeDee Lamb is an awesome top 5 receiver in the league, no question about it. George Pickens is going to, trust me as a Steelers fan, he will wear thin quick in Dallas. Not as quick as by week one. Dak Prescott now has a true number 2 receiver really for the first time since Amari Cooper in 2021. Can we show what Dak Prescott has done against the Philadelphia Eagles? Because sometimes the Eagles have had bad defenses, sometimes they've had great defenses. This is Rain Dakota Prescott against Philly in his career. He's excellent. 23 touchdowns, 8 picks. That's a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. You'll take that any day of the week. Throws for 261 pass yards per game, completes 66% of his throws, passer rating of 100, and he is 9-4 in his career against the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, he's played bad defenses, great defenses. Famously in 2022, when the Eagles led the league in sacks, really the defense is kind of what led them to the Super Bowl in 2022. Dak dropped 40 on their heads. Like that he has had a lot of success against this team in his career. And I think the fact, Philadelphia's game plan, I think, is going to be pretty simple. Saquon Barkley, tush push Saquon Barkley, play action fake, we'll throw one downfield to A.J. Brown. We're going to establish the run. That's who the Eagles are offensively. And Dallas is bad, despite what Jerry Jones is trying to gaslight you on, that Kenny Clark's going to be the savior for the defense, or the defensive line at least. Dallas cannot stop the run. So what's going to happen? Long, drag-out drives, not a ton of big plays by Philadelphia. Any big play they'll get will probably be in the running game. Long drives. Dallas is playing catch-up. Dallas can't run the football. Dallas will not be able to run the football, even if they were able to, because Philadelphia is going to build a lead. Dak's going to have to throw a lot. I have said the Cowboys will be the NFC's version of the Cincinnati Bengals. Dak isn't quite Joe Burrow. CeeDee Lamb is not quite Jamar Chase. George Pickens is not quite T. Higgins. But they'll have to throw a lot. All three are excellent at their job. Dak, again, last full healthy season. I don't know, Dak without a number 2 receiver in a running game, almost won league MVP. I think Dak's pretty good. He'll bounce back from a rough 2024. So I'm going to go, Philadelphia is going to win this game. The better team, they're at home, that are defending their Super Bowl title. But Cowboys plus 8.5. It's a divisional game, folks. Like, let's not act like these two teams know each other well. Dak did not play in either of the games last year when Philadelphia destroyed the Cowboys. Dak has had success against Philly. Give me the Cowboys plus 8.5. If this game were being played on Sunday, this would be one of my 3 if I were a Betman games. Cowboys plus 8.5. It's a divisional game. Philly's going to kind of play ball control, which favors the point spread for the Cowboys. Eagles win 31-24, and they start the season 1-0. Dak plays pretty well. He's played well against the Eagles his whole career, but the Cowboys obviously do not have the horses to knock out the Eagles in this game. Before we get out of here, because I mentioned before my prediction for this game that the Saturday morning tailgate is going to air on Saturday morning, of course, Saturday morning tailgate, at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time, live on the Grid Network's YouTube channel, X account. We may even go live on the Grid's Instagram as well. So definitely check out our brand new college football live podcast, which we're going to launch this Saturday. Myself, Tim Barnard, and Arthur Hurst. Another announcement that I myself have. So some folks may know this, that back last year, in the fall semester at school, I was part of a triplet of a radio show. It's called The Triple Option. Shout out to Asher Moore. Shout out to Addison Ragland. They were awesome co-hosts. We had a blast doing the Triple Option multiple times a week on our local campus radio station. I can announce today that starting on Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time, I will be launching my own radio show, The Bryson Carver Show, live on 89.5 The Edge at ETSU. You'll be able to listen to the show via the TuneIn app, which I will just say on the front end, TuneIn can sometimes be a little bit difficult with ads and stuff. It takes at times a long time to get to a radio station, but don't worry about that. We're going to have a lot of fun on the show. Hope to have some guests on. It will basically be a version of Carving Up, but with a little bit of a different twist. A lot of college football involved, obviously a ton of NFL, and plenty of what you see on the show. So definitely check out the Bryson Carver Show. That will launch on Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Standard Time, live on 89.5 The Edge. We hope you'll check it out. We will be on live on air every Monday at that time, 10 a.m. to noon. We're trying to work out a schedule to hopefully get the show consistently on Fridays. We will 100% be on Monday. So very, very, very excited about that, to be back on the live radio airwaves. So definitely check that out. I'll put the link to it once we're live starting on Friday, but very excited. Shout out to my man, Chris Mahi, who's a big Raiders fan at 89.5 The Edge. Great guy. Cannot wait to work with him once again this year. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun on this show. With that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Catch Carving Up live on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or X rather, and Facebook. There's going to be an NFL game that counts to react to. And we're going to have picks. And we're at the Vol View. We're going to have a loaded show. Cannot wait. Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Check out Carving It Up Live, YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook. Of course, before that, if you want to check out some of my takes from the night before that, The Bryson Carver Show, which will air on Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, from 10 a.m. Eastern to noon on 89.5 The Edge, which you can listen to via the TuneIn app. That is the TuneIn app, which is available wherever you get your apps on your phone. So definitely be sure to check out the debut of that show. Very, very excited about it. And very excited, of course, about the Saturday morning tailgate, which launches once again Saturday morning, of course, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time, live on the Grid Network, all of our platforms, YouTube, X, Instagram. We're hoping to get on there as well. A lot of college football talk. Cannot wait for that. Of course, very importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts. We got a lot of amazing content creators on the network, so definitely check out their stuff. Shout out to my man Ryan Flowers, who returned to NFL matchups last night. Very, very excited to have Ryan back into the podcasting fold. We'll see you on Friday. Hopefully Friday morning. Check out the Bryson Carver Show. If you're unable to check that, tune into Carving It Up on Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Cannot wait. NFL picks, Vol View, Cowboys, Eagles reaction. We got everything. We will see you then, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Bryson Carver Show, baby. Check it out. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.